Can you stay for just one night? The snow fell in thick, silent curtains outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Victoria Chen's corner office on the 42nd floor. She stood with her arms crossed, watching the city transform into a winter wonderland while the rest of Manhattan prepared for Christmas Eve. Below, yellow cabs crawled through the slush, their headlights cutting through the early darkness. Families hurried along the sidewalks, arms laden with last-minute gifts and groceries for tomorrow's feast. Victoria checked her Patek Philippe watch. 6:30. Everyone else had left hours ago, eager to begin their holiday celebration. She was alone in the building, save for the security guard downstairs and perhaps a few other souls too married to their work to remember what day it was. At 38, Victoria had built Chen Technologies from a small startup in her Brooklyn apartment into a multinational corporation worth billions. Forbes had called her the Iron Butterfly of Silicon Alley. Fortune magazine featured her on their cover with the headline, "The Woman Who Never Sleeps." They were right about that last part, though not for the reasons they thought. She didn't avoid sleep because she was driven or ambitious anymore. She avoided it because empty apartments and silent nights had a way of amplifying loneliness until it became deafening. Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother in Seattle. "Merry Christmas Eve, Vic. Kids say hi. Wish you were here." She typed back quickly. "Next year for sure. Hug them from me." It was the same promise she'd made last year, and the year before that. Victoria returned to her desk, intending to review the quarterly projection one more time, when she heard a soft knock on her office door. She frowned. Security hadn't called up. Nobody should be on this floor. "Come in," she called out, her tone sharp with surprise. The door opened slowly, and a young woman stepped inside. She wore a slightly damp peacoat over a simple dress, her dark hair dusted with melting snowflakes. She carried a backpack slung over one shoulder and held a folder in her hands. Her eyes were warm but tired, and when she smiled, it was apologetic. "Miss Chen, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm Emma Reeves. I have a 9 o'clock appointment tomorrow morning, but I saw the light on, and I thought," she trailed off, seeming to realize how this sounded. "I'm sorry. This was stupid. I'll come back tomorrow." "Wait." Victoria stood up, curiosity overriding her irritation. "How did you get past security?" "I told him I was your niece," Emma said, then immediately flushed. "I'm sorry. That was wrong. I've been trying to get a meeting with you for 6 months. 6 months of emails, calls, messages through LinkedIn. I even tried to approach you at that tech conference in October, but your security team blocked me." Victoria studied her. "And you thought ambushing me on Christmas Eve was the solution? I thought you might be more human on Christmas Eve." Emma's chin lifted slightly, a spark of defiance in her eyes despite her obvious nervousness. "I was wrong. I'll go." "What's in the folder?" Emma paused at the door. "A proposal that could change how we deliver clean water to developing nations, but it can wait until tomorrow. Merry Christmas, Miss Chen." Something in Victoria's chest tightened. Maybe it was the loneliness that had been building all day. Maybe it was the way this young woman had risked everything for a chance to be heard. Maybe it was simply that Victoria remembered being that hungry, that desperate to make a difference. "Sit down," Victoria said. "You have 5 minutes." Emma's face lit up with hope and relief. She practically ran back to the chair across from Victoria's desk, pulling papers from the folder with shaking hands. "Okay, so the problem is that current water filtration systems for villages in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia are either too expensive or require too much maintenance." "I know the problem," Victoria interrupted. "What's your solution?" Emma launched into her pitch. As she spoke, her nervousness melted away, replaced by passion and expertise. She showed Victoria designs for a solar-powered filtration system that was not only affordable, but could be maintained with minimal training using locally sourced materials. The engineering was elegant, the business model was sound, and the potential impact was staggering. Victoria's 5-minute promise stretched to 15, then 30, then an hour. She found herself leaning forward, asking questions, challenging assumptions, watching Emma rise to each challenge with intelligence and grace. "You built a working prototype?" Victoria asked, studying the photos. 3 of them. One is currently operating in a village outside Nairobi. I spent 6 months there last year. Emma pulled out her phone and showed Victoria a video of children laughing as they filled cups with clean water, their faces bright with joy. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest, some wall she'd built up over years of board meetings and hostile takeovers and sleeping alone in her penthouse apartment. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "There are other investors, other companies." Emma met her eyes. "Because 10 years ago you gave a commencement speech at MIT. I was in the audience. You said that technology without humanity is just noise, but humanity without technology is potential. we can never reach. You said the best companies don't just make money, they make meaning. She paused. I've been following your career since then. Somewhere along the way, I think you forgot that speech. But I haven't. I think you're the only person who can help me do this right. Victoria stood up and walked to the window. The snow was falling harder now, coating the city in white. She saw her reflection in the glass, a successful woman in an expensive suit, standing alone in an empty building on Christmas Eve. Do you have family, Emma? She asked. My parents are in Boston. I was supposed to drive up this morning, but I couldn't stop thinking about this meeting tomorrow. I told them I'd come Christmas night instead. Emma laughed softly. My mom is furious with me. You should go. Victoria said it's Christmas Eve. She heard Emma stand up, heard the rustle of papers being gathered. Thank you for your time, Miss Chen. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Emma. Victoria turned around. Can you stay for just one night? Emma blinked in confusion. I'm sorry. Not here. Victoria surprised herself with what she said next. I was going to order Chinese food and work through the night, but I have a catering company on retainer that could probably throw together a decent Christmas Eve dinner, and I have a penthouse apartment that sleeps 8. But usually only sleeps 1. She paused, feeling vulnerable in a way she hadn't felt in years. I'd like to hear more about your project, and I'd like to not spend Christmas Eve alone. Emma's eyes widened. Miss Chen, I don't want to impose. Victoria, she corrected. And you're not imposing. I'm asking. But if you'd rather go, no, Emma said quickly. I'd love to stay. Thank you. 2 hours later, they sat on the floor of Victoria's living room, surrounded by the ruins of a surprisingly excellent Christmas Eve feast that her caterer had somehow pulled together. A fire cracked in the fireplace. Snow continued to fall outside the massive windows, turning the city into something magical. They'd talked about everything, the water filtration project. Yes, but also their families, their fears, their dreams. Emma told stories about her time in Kenya that made Victoria laugh until her sides hurt. Victoria shared memories of her early startup days, sleeping in her office, surviving on ramen and ambition. Why did you stay late tonight? Emma asked, reaching for another spring roll. On Christmas Eve, Victoria was quiet for a moment because going home to an empty apartment seemed worse than staying in an empty office. At least here, I can pretend I'm working. You must have friends, family. I have a brother in Seattle, some cousins scattered around the country, and I have plenty of colleagues and business associates. Victoria swirled her wine. But friends? Real friends? Those fell away over the years. Too many missed dinners, canceled plans, phone calls not returned because I was in meetings. At some point, people stopped trying. That's sad, Emma said simply. That's success, Victoria countered, but her voice lacked conviction. No. Emma shook her head. That's what you've been told success looks like. But the Victoria Chen, who gave that MIT speech 10 years ago, wouldn't think this is success. She'd think this is sad. Victoria should have been offended. Instead, she laughed a real laugh, not the polished chuckle she used in boardrooms. When did you become so wise? Probably around the same time I decided to ambush a CEO on Christmas Eve. Emma grinned. They stayed up until 3 in the morning, talking and laughing and planning. Victoria found herself sketching out ideas for Emma's project, introducing her via email to contacts who could help, mapping out a strategy for global implementation. But more than that, she found herself simply enjoying another person's company in a way she hadn't in years. Emma was smart and funny and refreshingly honest. She challenged Victoria's assumptions, called her out when she was being too cynical, and reminded her why she'd started Chen Technologies in the first place. As dawn began to lighten the sky on Christmas morning, Emma finally stood up to leave. I should let you get some sleep, she said. And I need to get on the road to Boston before my mother actually disowns me. Victoria walked her to the door. Emma, about your project I'm in. Full funding, with Chen Technologies backing. We'll set up a subsidiary specifically for this, with you as CEO. We'll start with a pilot program in 5 villages and scale from there. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Are you serious? I'm always serious about business. But this isn't just business. Victoria smiled. This is meaning. You reminded me of that. Emma hugged her impulsively, and Victoria stiffened for only a moment before hugging her back. Thank you, Emma whispered, not just for the funding. For tonight. I think maybe you needed it as much as I did. After Emma left, Victoria stood at her window watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered city in shades of pink and gold. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Merry Christmas, Victoria. Thank you for staying. Victoria smiled and typed back. Thank you for asking. She looked around her apartment at the empty takeout containers, the papers scattered across her coffee table, the wine glasses waiting to be washed. For the first time in years, the emptiness didn't feel oppressive. It felt like possibility. Victoria picked up her phone and called her brother in Seattle. Vic? His voice was groggy with sleep. Everything okay? I'm coming for New Year's, she said. If the invitation's still open. Of course it is. The kids will be thrilled. Are you okay? Victoria watched the sun rise over Manhattan, thinking about a brave young woman with a folder full of dreams and the courage to knock on a closed door. I'm better than I've been in a long time, she said. Merry Christmas, David. Merry Christmas, Vic. She spent the rest of Christmas morning not working, but instead watching old movies and thinking about the year ahead, about water filtration systems and villages halfway around the world, about MIT speeches and forgotten promises, about loneliness and connection, and how sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to ask, can you stay for just one night? 3 months later, Chen Technologies launched the Clean Water Initiative. Emma moved into an office 3 doors down from Victoria's. They had lunch together every Thursday, and Emma never let Victoria work past 7 on Fridays. And Victoria never spent another Christmas Eve alone, not because she had suddenly acquired a full social calendar, but because she'd learned something important from a young woman in a damp peacoat carrying a folder full of dreams. Connection isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose. All you have to do is be brave enough to ask someone to stay, and wise enough to say yes.